All right, we're going to finish up section 5 of chapter 5 today, and we're going to do more with division, but this is the factor theorem part. Yesterday we talked about the remainder theorem, and so that remainder became part of the answer. Today, the factor theorem says that if the remainder is 0, then the divisor is a factor. So if you divide it all the way out and your answer at the end is a 0, and remember that was the value of if you substituted that number in, that was your answer. So if your answer is 0, then the number that you divided by is a factor. So let's look and see what we mean. We want to factor this function completely. So what I would suggest, because we know that x minus 3 is a factor and we're given that, we're going to divide by this x minus 3, and because it is in the form of x minus k, we can use synthetic division, which is much easier. So let's do that. So let's take our coefficients. So the 2, -11, 3, and 36, and we're going to divide by 3. So when we do that, we bring down the 2. 2 times 3 is 6, and -11 plus 6 is a -5, and 3 times -5 is -15. -15, 15 is -12, and 12 times 3 is -36. And -36 and 36 is 0, which is what we wanted it to be, because that says there is no remainder, which is a good thing. So now what this says is, so x minus 3 is a factor, and also this is 2x squared minus 5x minus 12. So that's what we have left in we divided out the x minus 3. So now we've got, so x minus 3 times 2x squared minus 5x minus 12. So we can either factor this or use the quadratic formula, or the different ways that we've learned how to factor. Let's start by trying to factor, just because that's easier. So let's look, and we know that 2x times x is 2x squared. And we know that if this term is negative, we need one positive and one negative. And I usually just put plus and minus, and we can switch them if we have to. And then 12, we multiply, and then we have to add together to get the -5. So we're going to multiply 3 times 4. Let's try 4 here and 3 here. 2 times 3 is 6, and 4. So 6 minus 4 is not -5. So let's switch them and see if that works. Let's try the 3 here and the 4 here. 3 times 4 is 12. 2 times 4 is a -8x. And 3 times x is a positive 3x. Aha! 8x minus -x and a -8x, and 3x is indeed -5x. So we have just found our other two factors. So when we factor completely, now we only have x terms in each of those, so those won't factor any further. So this polynomial will factor down to x minus 3, 2x plus 3, and x minus 4. The reason that's handy is now we want to find the zeros. What I mean when I say find the zeros is, if you'll remember, this polynomial is a picture of a graph that goes up and down and up and down, and every time it crosses that x-axis, that's what we call it, a 0. That is one of the solutions. That's one of these points. All right? So in this case, the places where the graph crosses that x-axis are going to be these places where these factors, where the factors equal 0. So if any of these equals 0, remember, then the whole thing equals 0. So the zeros in this equation would be, setting each of these equal to 0, we've got a positive 3 here, we've got a -3 halves here, and we've got a positive 4 here. So these would be the zeros of this equation, or this function. So see if you can do, when I say 1 0 is 4, then that means one of the factors is x minus 4, right? Okay, so that's one of the factors. So in order to find all of the zeros, what you're going to have to do is first find all the factors, and then set each of those factors equal to 0 and solve. And when you do that, you have found every place where that graph crosses the x-axis. So if you think you know what you're doing, pause it and divide it out and then come back. And if you don't this time, it's okay to watch me. Here we go. So to find the zeros, if we know one of them already, let's divide that one out first. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do synthetic division. So 1, 1, negative 16, and negative 16 are our coefficients, and 4 is what we're dividing by. So just bring it down. 1 times 4 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. 4 times 5 is 20. We subtract this down, and we get positive 6. No, positive 4. 4 times 4 is 16, and 0 is what we wanted. So one of the zeros is 4. Now we have 1x squared plus 5x plus 4 is what we have left. So, and that, remember, is multiplied by x minus 4. So now let's see if we can factor this. Did you do it already? Did you factor it? This one's an easy one to factor, because x times x is x squared, and both of these are positive, so we've got positives in here. And 4, we got to multiply to get 4 and add to get 5, and 2 plus 2 is not 5, so we need 4 plus 1 to be 5, and 4 times 1 is 4. If you're having trouble with factoring, go back to section 4.3 and 4.4 and look at those videos again, because we're going to be doing a ton of factoring. You need to be able to do that quickly. All right, so you've got these 3 factors, and so each of those factors, what we want now is not just factor it, but we want to find the zeros. So what we're going to do is set each one equal to 0. You can either do it on your paper. If you can do it in your head, these are simple enough that if you can do it in your head, that's okay. Because when you set this equal to 0 and add 4 to both sides, you're going to have a positive 4. When you set this one equal to 0 and subtract 4 from both sides, you're going to get a negative 4. When you set this one equal to 0 and subtract the 1, you're going to get a negative 1. So your zeros are, and actually I didn't put them in order, negative 1, negative 4, and 4, but any order is fine. So there's our zeros. 4, negative 4, and negative 1 are our zeros. All right, one more problem, because you know I like to do word problems. Here we go. All right, here's how we're going to use this. A company's profit, C, in thousands. Make sure you read carefully, because I worked this whole problem and I didn't catch that it was in thousands, and so I had to redo the whole thing. So a company's profit C in thousands can be shown as C equals negative 5x cubed plus 6x squared plus 15x, where x is the number of items produced in thousands. The profit is 14,000 for 2,000 items. What other numbers would result in the same profit? So what we need to do first is set up we've got our equation here, our function, and what we've got is the profit is 14,000. So because this is in thousands, our C is not going to be 14,000, it's going to be 14. That's what I did wrong on my notes. So 14 equals negative 5x cubed plus 6x squared plus 15x. So in order to change this into a function to be able to solve it, we've got to get it equal to 0. So you're going to subtract the 14. So we get this, and just for the sake of time, we're going to change this to 0 and this minus 14 here. See where those came from? All right, so now 2,000, the profit is 14 for 2,000 items. So this is saying that 2, remember, because it's in thousands, so 2 is one of the zeros. It's one of the places where this function is going to cross that x-axis. So 2 is one of my answers. I want to know what other numbers result in the same profit. So because this is a cubed function, we're going to have 3 possibilities, 3 answers. So let's see if we can find out what some of those are. We can do that by using our synthetic division, because we know that one of the zeros is the 2. So set up your negative 5, 6, 15, negative 14. Set up your synthetic division, and we're going to divide by the 0 of 2 because that 2,000 is in thousands. So we're just going to divide by 2. So bring down the -5. -5 times 2 is -10. So that makes -4 when you add. 2 times -4 is -8. No, 15 minus 8 is 8, 7. Is that true? Yes. And then 7 times 2 is 14. And sure enough, these drop out, which is what we wanted. So now we end up with 5x squared minus 4x plus 7. All right, so the x minus 2 was one place that it crossed the axis. Now we want to know, and we would like to just factor this, but we need to multiply together to get 5 and 7 and add together to get 4. So a real quick look says that, well, -5x times x is going to be -5x squared, but there's nothing, 7 is prime, so we could have 7 here, but then 7 minus 5 is 2, so that won't work. But if we switch them, we'll end up multiplying the 7 and the 5, so now we got 35, so that won't work. So in this case, you're going to have to use the quadratic formula. So if you remember, going back into your memory, quadratic formula, remember, is -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Remember that? You should have that burned into your memory. So let's set it up. This is the equation that we're factoring further. We're finished with this. We divided this out, so we don't have to go all the way back up to here. So we're just going to use this a, b, and c. So you're going to put in -4, negative of a negative is +4, plus or minus b squared is going to be 16 minus 4 times a -5 times 7 all over 2 times a is going to be -10. So now we have 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 20 times 7 is 140, still over -10. Now 4 plus or minus the square root of 156 over -10. And because I saw this coming, I put it into my calculator already. So 4 plus or minus 12.5, and that's roughly 12.5. It's not exactly, but I rounded it. So round it to the 10th over -10. So 4 plus or minus 12.5 divided by -10 is my answer. But so what we can do is let's finalize it. Let's finish it. So we've got 4. So 4 plus 12 over -10 is going to be 16.5 divided by -10. So this is going to be a negative answer, -1.6 if we 1.65. So is a negative answer even possible? Can I sell a negative amount of items? No, I can't. So this 0 is going to cross the x-axis on the left of my of the y-axis. So this answer is not plausible in this situation. So let's go to 4 minus 12.5 over -10. That's going to give me -8.5 over -10. Negative divided by a negative is a positive, so I get 0.85 is my final answer. And now remember, let's put it back into the problem. So 0.85 is my answer, and that is a possible answer because it's positive. Remember, though, that the number of items produced is in thousands. So it's not 85 hundredths of an item. We've got to multiply that by 1,000. So this 0.85 is out of 1,000. So this is 850 items. So if you sell 2,000 items, it's going to net you the same amount of profit as if you sell 850 items. Go figure. All right. It has to do with the amount, the amount of your cost also. All right. So step 1 is to divide by the known factors or the known zeros, and then once you get your answer from dividing, Then you need to factor that further, either by factoring or using the quadratic formula. And then if you're using a word problem, make sure that the answers fit your original problem. And that's it. I'll see you soon.